All right. News. So I personally like trading pretty much whenever there's news, whenever there's a red folder, I'm going to be trading that day. Whether that's, and that's contrary compared to DJR. But whenever there's news, like NFP, CPI, PPI, FOMC, right? I love to trade these news events because you're going to have high volatility. Price action, in my opinion, or for the models at least that I use, are really good, right? So I want to be trading these days. These days are going to give good volatility to the whole market for the whole week and a whole bunch of other things. So we'll quickly go over which are the best days to trade for this, and we'll first go over with NFP and then kind of how to trade NFP since we just had it, and then we can go and look at CPI and PPI as well. So this week we had NFP. So this is what your normal NFP week will look like. Sometimes you're not gonna have, obviously, you're not gonna have Trump speaking every Tuesday before NFP, and not all the time you're gonna have red news on Monday. But generally, the protocol for NFP weeks, right, is you want to trade Monday, you want to trade Tuesday, Wednesday, right? You want to be right. So these are the 2 days you want to trade, like or and Friday, obviously, right? These are on NFP weeks. These are the 3 days you want to trade. Why, in my opinion, are these 3 days the days you want to trade? Well, first off, our Friday is your NFP week, NFP day, right? And Monday and Tuesday, right, are going to be your highest probability days here before NFP, right? Because starting Wednesday and Thursday, right, day before NFP, we're going to be starting to form liquidity on both ends of the market, right? So just is generally how like an NFP week is going to go, right? You'll have good price action on Monday, right? Something like this, and then you'll have good price action on Tuesday, and then come Wednesday, you're gonna start kind of a more consolidatory kind of move, with Thursday being a complete, pretty much a seek and destroy day like this, before Friday just manipulates both ends of things and clears everything out, right? So this is why we generally want to avoid Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday AM session could be okay. PM session, you definitely want to start avoiding that. And Thursday, you definitely want to avoid Thursday at pretty much all costs. Like it's cool paper trading it, but I pretty much almost never take anything live on Thursday. Doesn't mean your setup can form. It's just generally it's going to be very seek and destroy, and we can go over and look at exactly what happened as well on Thursday. Okay, this is Thursday's price action. Really fucking dog shit, right? You have this low that's left intact here, right? Then you have price, right? This is very seek and destroy. Price comes up, right? And then comes back down to sweep the sell side, and then comes back up for the buy side, comes back down for the sell side, comes up, comes down, comes up, comes down, comes up, right? And then again, runs it back down here in the PM before running everything back up on the AM, right? I mean, again, at MOC, right? So this is a seek and destroy day, right? And what this did is it pretty much built up liquidity, right? Where do we build up liquidity here, right? We built up liquidity here and probably some liquidity up here, like right here by these by previous week high here. So what Thursday is Thursday is pretty much going to be a run seeking the short day and to build up that liquidity. So we don't want to be trading Thursday before NFP. Right, come Wednesday here. Wednesday really like again not really the best price action, but again Wednesday, right, the AM session pretty decent here. At least you get a general run up into this into this liquidity right here. And then come PM session, Wednesday PM session. This is just straight consolidation all the way into MOC, right? This is just straight consolidation building up even more liquidity down here, right? So we've built up liquidity down here, built up liquidity here, built up liquidity here, right? So we've built up all this liquidity. So now let's go over how we can pretty much trade these news events, right? CPI, PPI, and NFP. Generally, I do want to see the same thing happen for both, and that's one of two things. You want to either see NFP, CPI, or PPI manipulate some sort of way. So if this is our consolidation here, right, and this is your NFP candle that manipulates up here, right? Then if we have all this pent up liquidity down here, right? Then I'm going to look for NFP to come down and do its two-stage delivery and wipe out that buy side as a manipulation, and then wipe out the sell side afterwards, right? However, If NFP does something like this, right, where we manipulate downwards and we take all of the liquidity here, right? And I'm assuming that NFP was going to be its manipulation for us to distribute higher like this, right? Then I'm not going to target those lows here. So let's look at kind of what NFP did here. And what NFP did is we went higher here, right? While keeping these lows, this low, this low, this low, and these lows intact. So I'm assuming this is going to be in the manipulation to go into the opposite direction. So what am I looking to do on these NFP days and CPI days? Well, I'm going to look for a run on either the data high or the data low, and then I'm going to trade in the opposite direction. So in this case, we had the data high ran out with previous week high ran out. So I'm assuming, right, if we're assuming AMD, I'm assuming this is going to be the accumulation leg, right? This is going to be the whole manipulation leg, and then this is going to be the distribution leg process of it, right? And this is how I'm going to trade NFP every single time, right? I'm going to look to see am I gonna think that okay, this was a good enough manipulation to go lower that we're gonna continue to run higher, or was this just a manipulation higher for us to run lower, right? And that's something you have to judge. Look at where the low resistance is gonna be, right? And I think that's in my personal opinion the best way to trade NFP, CPI, PPI. They're all pretty much going to do the same thing. Let me see if we can find an example of price doing like the opposite. Let me go to when was the last NFP? Okay, let's look at January 10th here. I first want to start us off on the higher time frame. Right, we're clearly on a higher time frame kind of sell model here, right? We're coming up here, right? Rejecting this lower, coming down here, rejecting this lower here, right? Same thing coming out of this this daily civvy up here, and it looks like we want to do a rundown in this market maker sell model, right? Looks pretty bearish here, right? Because we're looking bearish here, right? When I'm going into NFP, right? Now, obviously, this is why you can't exactly pattern trade whatever I'm talking about, right? Because look, NFP clearly did not manipulate up and take any of this liquidity here, but we manipulated lower, right? So what I'm assuming is that this is going to be our manipulation to continue the distribution down to wherever we need to go. And that's going to be here, right? Let's just say that's this liquidity here. And this comes with a lot of narrative, and it's not something you can pattern trade, right? Like you can say, oh, we left all this liquidity up here, low resistance here, low resistance here, low resistance here, low resistance here, right? But where's our weekly target hit yet, right? And that's kind of what you want to think, right? And you want to think, okay, even if NFP, let's say, because we have to also think about this in a way where, okay, we can target the data highs and data lows, but let's also think about it as a perspective of where is the market trying to go in the first place, right? Is this manipulation leg going to be all market wanted to do, right? And this is as low as we want it to go, and then that's why we're going to come up and come to the data highs, or is this, right, this move going to help us continue to go lower, right, and go towards the lows, right? And I think something that's super important is that, well, let's look at what's happening in here. Is it really giving us any option to go higher here? It's not really giving us any options to go higher, right? You have this giant inefficiency, which of course can can be traded through and might be traded through most of the time, right? Especially if this was on manipulation lower. But again, you're not really getting that entry to go long, right? So there's no point in looking to go long and basing your drawn liquidity on data highs every single time, right? I would say treat news as like a giant volatility injection, right? And obviously, there's going to be a lot of liquidity at the data highs and data lows, but that doesn't automatically mean once you see NFP, you should target it, right? You should target the high and the low. Again, you have to use your narrative to figure out what's going on, right? Of course, in the higher time frame, we're bearish here, right? So it would make sense for us to continue lower to come and sweep out this liquidity here, right? Obviously, and like if in the 4-hour candle, we haven't done that yet, right? NFP happened here. This was your NFP candle here. This was your market open candle here, right? And look how close we are to these lows. So again, you can't just pattern trade this accumulation that you had from Wednesday and Thursday here, right? You can't just pattern trade that assuming that NFP manipulated downwards. Because if, in my opinion, if I wanted to see us have higher prices, I would have wanted to see NFP manipulate down all the way here. Now that we manipulated down all the way here, then maybe we can do a run up. But for me, since we haven't done that and my drawn liquidity hasn't been met, I'm not going to just pattern trade and assume that we're going to go higher here. Does that make sense? And that follows for all these news events that are like PPI, CPI, and NFP, right? And those are going to be my two protocols looking for it. Just looking for where the draw on liquidity is for the week, right? And if we've manipulated to and through that draw on liquidity, and if so, and if data lows are still left, then I'm going to trade in the opposite direction of it. And let's try not gamble on news. Oh, and let's not trade FOMC AM session. Let's not do that. And obviously news will bring you down to your draw on liquidity. That's just how news is manipulated, right? It's not based really off the numbers that come out of it. It's based off just where the liquidity is in the market. Yeah, I mean you can look at the last FOMC. When was our last FOMC? That shit was terrible, dude. 29th. Oh, it's not that long ago. This is the AM session of FOMC. It's just giant consolidation, right? FOMC. The way I like to see FOMC is I like to see a two-stage delivery. So I like to see FOMC bring you down or up, right? And then I want to trade in the opposite direction of it. But obviously you have to do it given the narrative. So again, one thing that I feel like a lot of people don't think of when it comes to news and they just strictly tunnel vision onto data high and data low is you have to read the narrative of what's going on in the market, right? I remember here clearly we had major SMT here, right, and here, and obviously that's what caused this run up here, right, all the way back up to these data highs here, and everything like that, right? So again, you have to use your narrative, right, to see did we manipulate down enough due to that news, and if so, then it would be wise to target the data high, data low, whichever one is still intact, and in the direction you wanna go, right? News should just be out of a manipulation, and if you did not see it manipulate down as much as you want it to, or clear out your initial draw on liquidity, then just continue trading in this direction, or and just look at price action as if news never happened. And don't avoid these days, bro. They're good days. Unless like you find like that you struggle trading these days, then don't avoid them. Oh, then avoid them. But for me, I really like these days. I think they offer really good setups, except for FOMC. The past couple FOMCs have been dog shit. But any questions about news? AM session with Powell at 10 a.m. Yeah, I would look at shit past 10 a.m. I'd kind of let that opening range play out and look at shit after 10 a.m. Like, I wouldn't mind trading probably, depends how long he's talking for, but at least give him like 10 to 15 minutes when after he started talking. Like, if he's still talking 10 to 15 minutes after he started, then you're kind of good to look for setups. 10 to 15 minutes after he stops talking is also a really good time to look for setups. But it is going to be heavily manipulated when he is talking, so you might see like crazy runs and shit. But if you have like a clear drawn liquidity and the narrative and everything is lining up, there's nothing wrong with taking a trade when he's talking. Right? I think it makes sense if he's talking, especially if you're doing like FOMC, right? Like here, and he's talking like here, and you see like a setup that you want to take. That's your model. Everything makes sense. Then you can take it just fine. Right? Same thing if he's talking in the AM session, you can take it just fine. It's not going to be that big of a deal. But something I will probably say in terms of the one that's coming up this week, I would say this week to wait for him to be done talking because there's a lot of shit with the tariffs going on in Trump, and I feel like, bruh, like this was Trump, bro. Like this was Trump, right? So there's a lot of shit going on with that. Like if we didn't have all this like Trump news and shit, I'd be fine trading that Powell thing. But other than that, like for this one specifically, I probably wouldn't be trading while he's talking, and I'll wait 10 to 15 minutes while he's done. But again, that's gonna have to come from gauging what's going on when he's talking, right? So a huge thing that you guys should be doing while he's talking or while you're going through news events is look at the technicals, right? Look at the price action. Does the price action make sense? If we're expecting this to be like, let's say this was a red folder news, right? Was this enough for us to manipulate downwards, or was the drawn liquidity still lower? If you think the drawn liquidity is still lower, then obviously you're going to take this inefficiency here or this breaker here, this breaker to continue lower. Right? Everything is set up here. You just got to use your technicals to figure out what's going on. That makes sense?